Hi everyone, how's it going? I wanted to use this week's update to basically talk about things that were left on the cutting room floor when we were writing and making the artwork for Killtopia. Like any creative project, be it video games, movies, there's always ideas that don't make it into the final, release. So, I wanted to dig into like the things that could have been when making Killtopia because there was a lot. Certainly with that first book, and of course the big ending. I always knew what the ending was going to be in, the very end of the book. But there's all this, stuff in the middle that changed and moved around and got cut, and yeah, even characters were quite different in the very first version. That was kind of in my head before I started writing. So yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of an insight into all of that. One thing I'll say off the jump, though, for people who, are maybe new to comic writing or want to get into it, or I'd say any other creative pursuit, if you do feel that something isn't working in your script or your project, whatever it is, don't be afraid to cut it. If you really think it's not working, you're like bashing your head against a brick wall trying to make it work. It's totally okay to consider, just cutting it. That is not wasted time. It's not wasted effort, because that idea you could maybe use somewhere else, or maybe rework it into another project, or it's like the analogy I always use is it's like panning for gold, right? You need to like pan for gold for a while, get through lots of like rocks and dirt until you finally get to the gold, right? So it's all part of the process, right? It's all constructive. So yeah, when it comes to yeah, Killtopia, there's a lot going on. So I'll maybe start with issue one, right? So before I even wrote that issue, I had a very different idea for what the character of Stiletto was going to be. In the final book, she's the best mech hunter in Neo Tokyo. She's like infinitely wealthy, a bit of a dick, who kind of goes goes through like probably one of the biggest transformations along with Omi throughout the whole arc. Initially, though, she was going to be Shinji's love interest, which is, obviously not not where we went in the end. But yeah, she was going to be more of like a Catwoman figure to Bruce Wayne's Batman. This antagonist who would, fight Shinji and race him to try and find Crash, while also kind of, flirting with him, and he's kind of nervous around her at first, but then starts to kind of feel like, oh shit, I'm kind of attracted to this psycho. But for various reasons, I just thought, nah, it was a bit cliched. It had been done before. And ultimately, like, I kind of knew where Stiletto's character arc was headed. Like, it was always, no spoilers, but where she ends up at the end of Killtopia 5 was always going to be, where she ended up. So, yeah, it's one of those things that I debated for a long time. I tried to make it work. I never actually wrote a script with that version of Stiletto in it. I kind of benched that version of her very early on. So I just felt, it's that kind of thing's been done. I don't want to retread, the classic kind of trope. But speaking of Stiletto, Killtopia 2, if you've read it, it ends with Stiletto basically clinging onto the back of King Kaiju as he's flying across, Neo Tokyo. Initially, they were going to have a fight on a Shinkansen bullet train, rocketing through Tokyo at like 700 miles an hour. Stiletto, in the final version, has magnetic boots. She does talk about them briefly. It's not really a big thing, in her arsenal. It's not really dwelled on too much. She just mentions that she's got mag boots, that can let her stick to surfaces and whatnot. Initially, that was going to be the fight. She was going to be clinging onto this speeding Shinkansen bullet train with her magnetic boots, walking along the side of it while having a fight. And I kind of thought that would be so cool to have to play with perspective and have like a sideways angle of her on the side of the bullet train fighting this giant mech. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. The problem is, and I think a lot of writers may understand this, it's a really cool idea, but it's just a cool idea. There was no real narrative reason to have this long, protracted fight on a bullet train. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, she's got these magnetic boots to help her cling onto the side of the speeding train. But like her spine would be broken, like with the sheer speed of the train, it would be like she would die. I know the Killtopia is not very realistic, but I just thought, like, the more I thought about the logistics of it, it was just a cool fight for having a cool fight's sake, and didn't really move the narrative forward. So that got benched. It did transform, well, it will transform into something kind of different in my next series that I'm writing in the Neo Tokyo world. I won't say anything about that just now, but it's something that I'm thinking about bringing back. Not a bullet train, but something, again, this is the idea of evolving your cut ideas. I'm kind of reworking that concept into something new. So whether it makes the final cut in the next project remains to be seen. But yeah, and what else changed? I mean, like the opening of the first book, I did write a very different opening that was a lot slower. There was going to be more of a plot point in the first book around air purifiers, like air filters in Neo Tokyo, these big towers. And Shinji initially was going to be a worker in one of these towers. You know, in the final book, he's very clearly mechanically kind of skilled. You know, he's a bit of a tech genius. He understands, you know, the very first scene in the book with him, he's analyzing the mechs. He's talking about the kind of chemicals that are coming out of their exhaust ports, and he's quite clear very quickly that he understands technology and mechanics. He learned it from his dad. That's just a sort of simple throwaway line. We didn't want to dwell too much on that backstory, but yeah, he learned that from his dead dad, how to be, you know, skilled with mechanics. But in the initial build, he was going to be working on these air purifier towers. But he kept on sneaking off to hunt mechs, and he was close to getting fired because he would disappear. He'd be late for his work, you know, things like that. So he was like on a, you know, very, very thin, you know, hanging on by a thread, you know, almost losing his job. And so he was living this double life, trying to juggle this job with, you know, hunting mechs to pay for Omi's rot medication. And initially, the very first scene of the book was a press conference held by the government talking about, I can't even fully remember because I cut it and kind of, I don't even know if the draft still exists anywhere, but it was basically like some sort of a government conspiracy about pulling funding from the air purifiers to put more money into promoting Killtopia as a blood sport, because they realized the rot is incurable, and they don't want to be held accountable. So let's just, you know, distract everyone with this flashy blood sport and put more money into that and keep everyone addicted to the hype and the fandom, and, you know, people worshipping Stiletto, and it helps them forget their pain. And actually, it was our artist on book 1 and 2, Craig Payton. He suggested, like, yeah, this is pretty slow, man. Let's just dive right in. And that's where I just thought, yeah, do you know what? He was right. And I basically reworked the concept into being like an initial news broadcast about Killtopia. Very quickly, bang, 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 set it up. Not like full exposition. If you read it, it's not like this is Killtopia and this is what's happening. It's more of a news broadcast that kind of explains just enough to make it feel natural. I'm not a big fan of exposition. I've been known to do it sometimes, but I always try to deliver that exposition through things like news broadcasts and flashbacks and dialogue and cutaways and things like that. So yeah, there's other methods to do that. But yeah, it was too slow, basically. I'm going to get into heavy spoiler territory now. So if you haven't read Killtopia 1 to 5, like, stop watching now. But if you have read them, I'm going to give you some more little interesting facts and cut scenes that didn't make the final book. So okay, that's your warning. So in the Killtopia arc, Crash turns into a bad guy. That was always going to be the case. A lot of people have asked me, like, you know, oh, does he ever turn good again? And you know, this was before book 5 came out. We now know ultimately what happens to Crash, but the end of Killtopia 5, I knew what it was, right? It was always going to end on that scene with a character hearing something like some sort of remnant of the mech code inside their nanomachines, like a whisper, hinting that IO is still very much alive and hasn't been defeated. And that was like hopefully going to open the door for a sequel, which became Phantoms. I didn't actually know at the time what Phantoms was going to be. I had no clue. Initially, though, it was going to be Io talking to Shinji. So Shinji would be working on actual working air purifier towers in Sector K while they rebuild the sector into a new city. He'd be working on the top of one of these towers. You know, he's gone legit. He's got a new job. You know, he's not wrecking anymore because, well, Killtopia has ended now. So, but initially he was going to hear Io talking, and that would like trigger that sort of that plot twist that, oh god, maybe Io is not destroyed. However, I had another version of that ending where it wasn't Io talking to Shinji. He would basically hear like a strange noise overhead, and he wouldn't see this, but in the background there'd be a big flash. And then he's like, oh, what was that? Must have been the wind. Then it cuts to an alleyway where there's a crashed spaceship, and Stiletto hobbles out of it, beaten up. You know, she basically survives the mech battle at the end of issue 5, and a little kid is like, "Oh my god, you're Stiletto," and she's like, "Yeah, no shit, kid. Where's the nearest hospital?" Or, you know, some I didn't know the full line, but I thought that would be a funny thing. Like, she survives in the end. But I thought, you know, like, it's such a cop out. I thought that having Stiletto die at the end of book 5 was way more impactful, because her character journey, like, she's had overall a very negative impact on not just Neo Tokyo society but the planet, because of her toxic brand, her just the way she acts, her disgusting wealth, and throughout the series she gives it all away gradually. Not just her money, but she gives away her persona. You know, when she goes back to see her mother, Nezumi, and becomes like more kind of a ninja again, she remembers where she came from. And then she gives away her company. So it's just her shedding herself, peeling back the layers of the onion until the real Stiletto, the real Gwen, is revealed and gives the ultimate sacrifice. So I thought to have her come back and survive that would just be kind of, you know, not too finite, you know, and would undermine her sacrifice. You know, I just thought that having her die, as much as I love writing Stiletto, I love writing that character. She's my favorite character to write. I thought it was time to just let her go, you know. There was a third option though, which was going to be Crash coming back, but I thought, again, same thing, right? A bit of a cop out. So, you know, I didn't do that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, there's a few smaller things, but nothing on that kind of scale, you know, like the ending and whatnot. But initially, Bloody Mary was gonna be, you know, maybe more of a character earlier on, but I didn't want to overload the cast too much with like all these extra characters and whatnot. So yeah, I didn't want to. I wanted the Wreckfest finale to be a bit like Avengers Endgame, where all the characters have something interesting to do in the final battle. And there's even things like, you know, at the very start of the whole series in Killtopia 1, there's a scene where Crash and Shinji get chased by Sector K security drones, and he makes a comment, kind of a throwaway comment, but it's natural. It felt natural, like his dialogue. He says, you know, they dive into the water to escape it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you see, like the drone saying no heat signatures detected, and it gives up chasing them because it can't detect their body heat." But in Killtopia 5, you know, there's the scene where Nezumi and Shinji get chased by the same security drones. He basically pushes his bike to the limit till it overheats and almost like explodes. So the drones basically see that as the bigger heat signature and chase that down instead of chasing him. And it's a little callback. Like he knows how these drones work. I don't know if you watched this and you read the series, I don't know if you picked up on that, but it's just a little character growth. Like, he's more confident. He knows how the drones work. Also, like, you know, he learns how to ride those bikes. It's the same magnetic bikes that he drives in Killtopia 2, except in that book, you know, he's got a crappy little scooter that's kind of modeled against Canada's motorbike in Akira. So, you know, by Killtopia 5, he's grown as a leader, he's more confident, so he's got the full fat bike, you know, and he's like doing like mad tricks on the side of a building. And yeah, so it's just like all these little callbacks, like to show the characters have grown and their skills have evolved and they've actually learned something along the way. So yeah, I think that's all the main ones. I mean, again, like I say, there's a few smaller things, but some of those things actually have made the jump to Phantoms, so I don't want to say too much. But yeah, it's just funny how projects evolve over time. and my biggest problem as a writer is doing too much of that remixing before I commit to writing a script now. I spend so long like thinking about, is this the right thing for the script? Is this the right thing for the story? I cut things, I start over. So I do write a lot slower these days, but I just want to be confident that what I'm writing is the best possible thing at that time. So yeah, that's another reason why I'm slowing down recently. I'm just spending more time assessing the idea, and because I want you guys to have the best possible output from me, which comes with a lot of its own pressure. But it's, you guys are paying for these books. I want to make sure that they're actually decent. So I get more satisfaction rereading my own work and putting my work out there if I know it's the best thing I can do. So yeah, I hope this has been interesting and insightful. I'd love to know your own favorite scenes from Killtopia. Actually, the whole arc so far. I'm just interested. What part stands out to you? What do you remember? Yeah, I'm always curious, because to me it's all, I know that story inside out like the back of my hand, because I've spent so many years fine-tuning it. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm going to make these a regular thing every Friday, not just about comics, but various other topics that are taking my interest week to week. So yeah, thanks for your time. Have a great weekend when it comes, and all the best. See you later. Bye.